Hey guys, it's been a while. Been super busy, but I'm back on track. So today, or tonight I guess, it's time to put together a Dynamite Mach 2 19 that is specifically designed for the Traxxas trucks, the Revo, T-Max, Rustler, Jado, all of those. This is a motor that's discontinued and has a lot of positive reviews and also not so positive reviews. So over the last couple months, I've been pretty much collecting what I have been able to within reasonable price. And this particular one that I'm putting together came out of a pretty nice T-Max that I bought from some guy on Facebook Marketplace. If I have any photos of the Marketplace purchase, I'll throw it up. But the guy was super cool. He said he ran about 2 gallons on this thing with Sidewinder, 20% nitro and 12% oil. And it shows that he knew how to take care of his engines. So luckily for me, I'll be able to put this together and run it without having to break in a new motor. But this one right here has a lot of pinch left, so you can see right here that's as far up as it goes. Super clean sleeve. So this particular model is a 5-port, I believe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the exhaust. So that is probably going to be helpful for top end performance. So the more ports you have, the more top end or more breathing the motor has. This is the piston. So the Sidewinder fuel is really good. And 12% oil shows itself here too. This is all clean, by the way. I've already cleaned this. I've already done my oil passage, just opening that up with a diamond tip. I didn't do the other side, but the side to the crank is the most important. So you can see some caster varnish there. But what's nice about this particular motor design, piston design, is that it has 2 oil grooves. So that should help with longevity. And you can see the thickness of the material of the piston is quite a bit more than Traxxas motor. I'd say it's pretty equivalent to an OS piston, like the OS 0.18 TM or the 21. So I guess right here, the rod is also knife edged, and it looks pretty good. I was able to confirm that the SH18 rod is the same exact rod as this one. So thanks to Bug 404 and his channel and all of his work that he's put into this particular motor, I've learned a whole bunch from him on this. So I'm taking what he experienced and learned and his feedback, along with a couple other of his followers who commented, and I'm incorporating it in here. So hopefully I'll be able to get a pretty good experience. I think the potential is there with this motor. with it being a 5-port and also being pretty durable. It's the quality of the material SH uses pretty good. So that's the piston and sleeve. After 2 gallons, there's absolutely no play in the wrist pin. There's no wiggle room or anything. And the guy also said that against the 3.3, he said this particular motor head-to-head with his buddy's Revo, his T-Max would outrun it. And he was running the stock Traxxas pipe on this one. So this is the head. It's pretty much brand new. So no dents or anything. Very nice head. The bearings that came out of this motor, it was not pretty. So I should also explain to you the case. So I already went ahead and did my special modification to the case to help bring more oil or fuel to the rear bearing. This particular case is the same exact design or lack of as the Traxxas motors. There is absolutely no cavity on the bottom over here for oil to come down and kind of like get to the bearing. So and also this little lip right here is barely anything, so the bearing sits on this, and then this tiny little lip is supposed to be the void for oil to kind of like get in from the front. So you know, that's the same exact issue as the 2.5 and a 3.3. And this particular motor has an even smaller rear bearing than the Traxxas motors. So yeah, I just added that. So I also ended up buying a brand new Dremel and a couple different bits. So this particular job is, I think, my best work yet compared to the Traxxas 3.3 that I did initially. This was with, I guess, carbide. I did carbide rotary file. I used a file to get the, the cut, and then after that I used a rubber polishing wheel, and that really came out nice. So that's that. You can see with a completely untouched case, that's what it looks like. And I'll put up pictures of the difference if this doesn't come out clearly. And then that's the 3.3 that I did, which I ran a bunch. So you can see how I went a lot deeper, and I just stayed on the bottom instead of trying to go all the way around. Just stayed on the bottom, and I just made the cavity a little bit, deeper, and I guess deeper and longer in. But I stop at that lip, so the bearing still has a bunch of real estate to sit on, so that cavity really doesn't harm anything. This is the head button. You can see there's no detonation, so 20%, 0 issues. He's using a OS number 8, and so that's what I'll be running as well. I think the number 8 is the medium, so that's going to work out good. This right here is, let's see what this thickness is. This is a 0.2 millimeter shim. This is the crank. I'm not doing any work to this, not yet. I want to run the motor first. I never ran this motor, so I'm kind of excited to test out something new and see how it does. But you can tell this is a very small crank. Crank window, intake, I guess, window is, let's see, this is a 2.5, so I'd say it's bigger than 2.5. Surprisingly, the crank pin is smaller in OD than the Traxxas. The Traxxas has a thicker pin, which is surprising. But this is the 3.3, so it's kind of like in between both. But yeah, it's interesting that this particular motor has a smaller crank pin than the Traxxas. This particular one after 2 gallons comes in at 3.94, 3.95, 3.94, 3.95. So that's where this is at. I'm kind of like just documenting that for myself when I open it back up later, but you guys can also see here there's no play. It's super tight. So that's after 2 gallons. 2 gallons, and then let's see how high this thing goes up. Without, yeah, this is about where it sits. 3.59. Wait, let me see. Sorry. Yeah, 3.57. 3.59. Alright, so the void from the top of the cylinder to the stopping point of the pinch is 3.59. Just to compare the serial, this is for 2.5. The timing duration is shorter on the 2.5 than the 3.3, so putting this in a 3.3 most likely would still provide you some increase in power, but the timing duration, the opening and close of the intake, so the intake duration is quite a bit shorter. I don't know how much shorter, but there's quite a bit more material on the crank on the 2.5 versus the 3.3, so that's where all the power is coming from when you're swapping a 3.3 crank into a 2.5, is that Traxxas just cut down the sides of the crank to allow the intake, you know, the timing, basically it stays open longer. It opens sooner and it closes later. So I don't know what the degrees are, but just by measuring the height, you can tell that there's a lot less material in the 3.3. So anyways, that's something that I kind of saw recently, but you can see how much more opening this particular one is compared to this, so I'm sure there's quite a bit of improvement there. Yeah, so I can show you an OS case and I'll show you what is good. So this particular case is from it's a 18 TM, but you guys can see, I'll point this out. So this right here, the bearing sits against this particular lip right here. If you put, you know, like right here is where the void is. So the bearing is sitting against here, and then you have this huge void right here, which means the bigger of a lip you have, the more void you have, so the more air there is for oil to seep, you know, in between into the bearing. So when you don't have a lip, or you have a very little lip, there's very little oil that can really make its way. So this is a OS design, all right? And you can also see that there is a cavity, or, you know, like a cutout right here. There's additionally to this pretty nice lip, which creates that void for oil to come in and fill. There's also a cutout on the bottom that's noticeable, which also helps oil go in. So I don't know if you guys can see that lip right here. Yeah, yeah, that right here, that lip right there, that is basically, the crank is sitting on over here, and then this is all air for oil to come through, and then it just comes in here. The OS motors use the same size rear bearing as the Traxxas motors, and yeah, you guys can see that right there, I hope. Yep. So looking at different motors and designs allows you the ability to kind of learn from better design motors. These are the exhaust ports. Pretty big. The OS has more material, just more quality, but the internal dimensions seem pretty big for both. The OS might be a little bit more, honestly. Yeah, the OS is more than... The OS has a bigger exhaust port. I didn't pull out an OS piston and sleeve to compare side by side, but maybe that's another video. And then, so this is a 2.5, and you can see there's absolutely no lip. There's no lip. Right, there's just a little tiny thing here, you can barely feel it, and then here there's absolutely no cavity. So you got no help, you know, from the crank to get oil in to the bearing, and you barely have anything here. So that's kind of a design flaw. They did incorporate a very small cavity or channel in the 3.3, so there is a tiny little lip over here, right over here, that, you know, should help a little bit of oil come down, but it's just not enough. So yeah, so Traxxas did try to add a tiny little lip, or, you know, air gap for oil to go down into the rear bearing, but it wasn't enough, and this one doesn't have it at all. So we'll see. So now for the big thing. This particular one is a 2-dot backplate, and the whole situation with this particular motor is the backplate, from what I've been reading. And from what I've honestly seen from the few motors that I've bought, used on eBay, and good examples from new, and then this one. So it does seem that Dynamite or SH used some really shitty material here. This one, surprisingly, is a different color from the other ones that I have, which are also 2-dot, and this one seems to be in the best shape. So I don't know if they changed material at some point or what, even after the redesign, but this one doesn't have much play. I imagine that this thing would be just fine to run, but I took it upon myself to buy the SH rear backplate. Whatever there was a stock left, I think there was like 2 or 3 left in stock on A-Main, and I bought them because I didn't really want to run into the backplate issue. If that's the only issue with this motor, then, you know, and if there's a solution, which this particular design of a backplate, I think, is much smarter. Here's the comparison between the two. The quality of this SH18 looks so much better than this one. See, this bushing is massive, much thicker. So, yeah. And then these are the shafts. You can see, I mean, this is brand new. I haven't used it, but it's a different way of applying the one-way bearing. And this is also full. Like, this is solid, this is hollow. So in theory, this is stronger. But instead of having the bearing on the outside, this is always spinning, right? And this is how the Traxxas motors are designed and the OS motors are designed, which it's not a bad design because Traxxas uses a really good one-way bearing. But this is always spinning. So when the engine is running, this is always spinning. It's always wearing, you know, or putting drag on the motor. Whereas if you think about this, this is going in. So this is always in the engine. The one-way bearing always is getting some good lubrication. So technically it should last longer. And when you think about it, this bushing does not get worn near as much because the this right here, which is the shaft does not spin once the engine is started because the one-way bearing is on this side. So the only thing that's spinning at this point is like when you start it up, right? You're pulling, the one-way bearing is going to catch, right? And then after that, the pull start goes away and then the motor just spins on its own. So, and then the one-way is just spinning freely and this is not going anywhere, which means your shaft is not wearing against the bushing. So that should offer, you know, a more sealed engine, right? And it should also offer less drag. So the engine should have, it shouldn't be dragged down as much because it's not spinning the shaft on the bushing, it's only spinning the one-way bearing. So another really good thing that I caught in one of the comments that one of the guys made on Bug 404's post or video, one of his videos. He's got a bunch of videos, and honestly, the videos that he has of this thing running, it looked like it was running really good. Like, it sounded super healthy. Had a nice, he was running this pipe right here, this THS pipe. He's running this thing, and it sounded really good. I'm not going to be running this pipe, but that's just for another thing. But yeah. So, anyways, somebody went through the motion of doing this using the SH backplate, but I think he realized that this particular backplate is just slightly more narrow than this, and I can show you guys by checking. So the width, I guess, overall, right, from it supporting the crank is 19.35, And this one will be taking the measurement from there, and that is 18.83 or something like that. So obviously it's a little, this one right here, this is 2 in, so this needs to come out a little bit to match this one, or else what will happen is you're going to have a void in between, you know, your crank over here, so your rod is going to want to walk out. So luckily it's not the other way, and this isn't you know, thicker than this one. So what the guy suggested was to put one of these O-rings, or not O-rings, I'm sorry, shims, nylon shims that are used for, you know, the Traxxas backplate that you put back here. You just put it over here in the back, and that's enough. That's enough spacing to match the other guy. Let's see here. See, 19.42. You got 19. It just depends how I actually measure it. 19.4, and then you got 19.47. So, well, now you got 19.4, right? So you give or take a little bit, which is totally fine. So that tells me that, you know, I'm good there now. And so yeah, this is just you know, an experimentation, and A-Main had quite a bit of these parts, and the carburetor, which I've already greased these up and sealed everything. This is the carb that came off this motor. It's all metal, so it's really nice. The inside diameter, I'm not quite sure what the inside diameter is, but it sure seems bigger than the Traxxas. Let me see if I can actually measure this. I think Traxxas is 5.5, 5.8. Okay, 5.8. The inside being like where the air is coming in. I don't know if I can reach that. Can I reach that? Yep. This one is 6.2. 6.2. 6.3. 6.35. So that's 0.5 of a millimeter more. And so this obviously brings in more air. The neck is a lot smaller, so unfortunately it's quite difficult to try to find a replacement carb, so you're kind of stuck with this. And Bug 404 also called out that the SH18 carb works, and I would believe him because this is an SH motor. SH rod, these rods are insanely cheap for the SH, like 14 bucks or something on A-Main. I'm not sure about the crank. The crank would be quite interesting to know if it works. I know the stroke is a little different. Well, yeah, I think it's the stroke that's different, so the crank might not actually work. But the piston, I think, is the same OD on the SH18. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think the piston is the same size, so the bore is the same and the stroke is different. Yeah, I think that's what it is. But yeah, you can get a SH18 for like 90 bucks, which is really cheap. So yeah. Alright, what else is there? So yeah, then you got your pull start. I'm going to use the SH pull start. This pull start is designed for the 15, 18, and 21. should be interesting. I've had RTR motors and the 1/8 scale stuff, which were probably this type of quality, and they work okay. So I like the handle. Handle looks pretty big, so we'll see. I think these are pretty reasonably priced, much cheaper than the Traxxas stuff. But everything's on back order now for the SH motors, which is kind of, at least it's on back order, it's not discontinued. But yeah, so now let's move on to the bearings. So this is what I pulled out of it. Really horrible bearings. For 2 gallons, both bearings are absolutely annihilated. This motor uses a big block 607 size front bearing, which is kind of nice. So it has good support in the front, but then the back bearing is insanely small. It's like a 6800, I think, is what the number is. I'm going to be trying out the fast eddy bearings, and I found out that the HPI Nitro Star 0.18 uses this particular size. Acer does offer this size as well, but it didn't identify if it was an engine bearing. I did email them after I ordered this, and they confirmed that that bearing would work. So my next go around, taking this thing apart and having to replace, I'll probably go with a Acer ceramic. But I got to be honest, these don't look bad. The fast eddy, I got both for 15 bucks, and if you get this kit, you get 2 of the same size, and you just take the both seals off, and then you're good to go. There's one motor that I got used, and the guy put a bearing in it, and he had the shield in it. He had the shield facing on the inside, so there's no oil that was getting in from the front, so that couldn't have been good. But it's actually right here. This thing is bad, like horrible. And it was a metal shield too, so the guy had it like right in like this. Like, you got to take the shields off both sides. I know there's a kit on eBay that's 30 bucks for 2 bearings, and it has a shield, and some people don't realize they got to take the shield off. But what I'm trying to get to is the fast eddy bearings. They're ABEC 5, I think, which isn't, it's not bad, but compared to the stock, the I guess the ball shield, what holds the balls in place, is quite a bit thicker on the fast eddy bearing, and the outer race and the inner race are a lot thicker. So this should be an upgrade, you know, to start out with. It's steel, and it's, I don't really like the construction of it being a metal, I guess shielded bearing, if that's what you call that. I like the plastic PFE or PEEK ball retaining design. These have less, they're less forgiving than the plastic ones. So and since these are so small, the inner diameter is a 12, I think. Huddy doesn't make a tool to pull. Oh, it's 9.8. They don't make a tool, so you gotta, yeah, you gotta manually heat the block up and then put the bearings in. So the block needs to get to like 350 for the bearings to pop out. I had trouble with this one, and I was worried that I was bringing it too hot, but it needed about I'd say 330, 350, and I could get that with the heat gun, but you definitely need to heat the block up quite a bit to get the bearings in. So I'm gonna put the bearings in, and then I'll come back and we'll assemble this thing. Alright, so I got the bearings in. I didn't cover which bearing I have up front. Basically, this is just coming out of my spare part stuff used. This bearing looked in good shape. It's a SKF bearing. Steel, nothing too special, but it's tight, and so it should work. And then here is the rear bearing installed. I put the bearing, I oriented the fold, I guess, of the inside bearing holder. You'll see like how it's designed, I guess, how it's folded. The fold or crease to put, that holds it all together is facing towards the inside. So if the bearing unfolds itself, it's going to unfold itself from the inside. Hopefully that'll just retain the damage. Yeah, so next up, just put the crank in. Now you can hear how nice and smooth this is. Yeah. Throw a little bit of WD-40. I actually ordered some little bottles, so I'll make a mixture of oil and WD-40 at some point. Get this thing in there. This one's not too easy. You gotta bring it in like that, and then you gotta turn it away or something. There's not much space for this guy. There it goes. Alright. And this right here, should have done this a little bit earlier. Just wipe this down, make it easier to get it in. This is never dull. Yeah, you can see that the exhaust port is pretty big on this motor compared to the Traxxas. Right here. Here we go. This is the 2.5. You can see the difference. So, exhaust port, transfer ports, boost port, and then transfer port. That's crazy. And this is the 3.3. So, sorry, wrong side. So again, you can see this one has a more blowdown. This one drops down a lot more than this one, but they're about the same width. Transfer ports are not much. Same here. You got intake boost port that is lower than this one, and then the bore size of the 3.3 is more so than this one. So the stroke on this guy is a little bit more than this one. The 3.3 is way over squared. This one's a little bit closer to equal, and this one is very close to being square. The 2.5. That's why the 3.3 destroys rear bearings, because of the bore is so much more than the stroke. So alright, let's see if this will go in easily or not. Everything is clean. Well, one last try. Yep, that's all clean. Let me get this in here. Might be off camera. Honestly, I should probably mock this up and confirm that it actually will work. I forgot about that. So let's put this in there and visually check and make sure that it's going to be good. Oh yeah, look at that. Holy shit. Let me bolt it up first, so we aren't assuming anything. This motor is going on my new Revo build, and I was lucky to find a Dynamite Platinum exhaust that was designed for the Revo, specifically for this engine. Seems like it's well built. It's a multi-chamber muffler or pipe, and the header is wide open, so the inner diameter is huge on it, so that's going to be great. Okay. Alright, so there is a little bit of wiggle here, but that's most likely because I don't have a flywheel on. Let's pop this flywheel on and see what we got. This is not the flywheel I want to run, though. I want to run this flywheel. Yeah, I'll come back to this. Just want to get this done for the video and just test fitting. So this particular motor doesn't use the same nut as Traxxas. That's another thing too. That's not cool. But you just gotta roll with it. Alright, so see, another way to tell if your bearings are good, and this is only can't speak, preliminary. It's late. Basically, you know, it's just a good indication, but it doesn't mean your bearings are bad. But like when you're able to pull and you see some flop or some looseness in your flywheel when you're pulling back and forth, that can mean that your bearings need to be checked. See, this is completely tight, no play whatsoever. That tells me the bearings are solid. So let's take a look and see what kind of play we have. This is how it sits right now. Hopefully you guys can see that. Looks pretty good. I don't see any problem there. Yeah, it looks perfect. Yeah. Oh. Oh. There's a little bit of play there, but I think that's pretty good. So now that we saw that, let's put in the stock backplate and see how much play there is, just to compare. Yeah, just to compare and see. And of course, I'm going to make sure that I cook this thing with 300 degrees Fahrenheit when I run this thing. I'm going to make sure I can get it really hot for my viewers out there. This thing's not having a hard time. That's all I enjoy doing, is building these things, making them run real good, and then cooking the shit out of them. Alright, so there's the same amount of play here. Okay, cool. Alright, so you can see right there, that's kind of how it looks like with this setup. Look at that, there's so much more void here with this back plate. Yeah, because the thing is cut out, which means there's more volume. There's more crankcase volume with this setup. I'm not sure if that is going to be good or bad, taking crankcase volume out. It should help create some response, some initial throttle response. I would think would be better with less volume, but yeah, so that's it. Yep, so that's gonna work out. Yeah, I'll just put this stuff together and I'll come back to you guys. Unless you guys want to see this, I don't know. I guess you guys can fast forward. You guys can fast forward. Yeah. Yeah, so all of this being hollow and open, that is air volume within the case, which can, I don't know what the effect is there, but there's definitely an effect of some sort. Yeah, I'll put this together. I'll put RTV on this, and then put all this together, and and come back once it's together. I'll show you guys what it sounds like, what the compression is, and that'll be the video. Now, I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching. Alright guys, I got this thing put together. I'm pretty impressed. Also very happy that it all came together as planned. I did end up putting another shim behind the one-way bearing. I noticed when I put everything together there was still a little bit of play there, so another shim or washer, if you will, 2 nylon washers. Picture right here is how I put it together. And yeah, this pull start, you know, with these particular style pull starts, you got to make sure that it doesn't spring out, you know, because these ones don't have any retaining feature or backplate or anything like the Traxxas style, so the cord will basically just jump out if you're not careful and you kind of keep it squeezed. There's a spring that you install in between the shaft and the pull start when you're putting it on. So this setup reminds me of the old days where we ran Team Lozy XXX NTs, and those .15s were these style pull starts, and you can hear this thing. This thing's got compression. Just got a little bit of WD-40 in there, but you can see it function. This thing also, I just quickly Googled what the shim stack or shim size should be for this motor when it comes to running 30% nitro. Since I like to run 30%, a little bit more than that, it's about like 32%, but let's say it's 30%. They suggested to add 0.1 to a 0.2 millimeter additional shim on top of the stock 0.2 millimeter shim that they suggest to run with 20% nitro. So luckily, in my lot of used parts that I have accumulated for this particular motor, there was a head button that had a 0.1 and the brand new in the box you get a 0.2 and a 0.1, so I got lucky. I found a 0.1, slapped it on there, so now this thing has an overall of 0.3 millimeter shim stack with a OS number 8 plug. This motor does not take long reach plugs, it takes short standard size height plugs, and I sealed it up. I did not seal this up because I'm not sure how this is going to fit on the Revo, so once I understand where this carb is going to sit, I'll mark the case with some sort of indication. Not sure what I'm going to use as my mark for the carb, but I think it has a pretty good seal. I mean, everything is nice and tight here. I wouldn't imagine that it's going to leak from here, but just to make it all really perfect, I'm going to figure out a way to mark the side of this and this once I have the linkage and everything set up, and then I'll seal it. and yeah, this is the little bolt, little screw that's going to hold the clutch bell and everything in place. I'm going to start off with running the stock clutch with this engine. I know that the OS .18 doesn't make enough power to require aluminum shoes, so I was able to run, and even the 3.3 runs totally fine with the stock clutch, so I imagine this one will run just fine with the stock clutch. The guy did have a aluminum 3 shoe on this thing on his T-Max, but I like the stock carbon, I guess, material clutch. It just lasts forever and there's no maintenance involved. So this concludes this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. You guys can hear this thing is gonna rip. So this will go in a short chassis Revo 2.5, and I most likely will do a few idle tanks, you know, just to ease my my concerns of whatever shape this is in. But obviously it's in really good shape. Brand new bearings, there's no play in the rod or crank, and then, you know, the piston and sleeve has really good compression, good pinch. It's going to be great. So should be able to run this thing in the next week or so, maybe sooner. We'll see. I'm currently enjoying wrenching, and my next project is going to rebuild that T-Max that I've been abusing. So more to come on that. But yep, hope you guys enjoyed this this build. We'll see how it goes. I do enjoy the fact that this thing is light, a very light motor. So very small package, should be quite fun. All right, guys, have a good one.